All right, welcome back to part two, everyone. Hopefully, you enjoyed part one. Completely that, without any issues. If you got any issues, actually, hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM. I'll try to help you out. I think where we left off, we were making the cylinders or duplicating it, so let's go from there. Okay. All right, so we have all of these, right? Perfect. Let's, you know what? Let's go Shift S to bring it back to the middle. Bring the 3D cursor back to the middle. Shift C, sorry, not Shift S. So I'm going to rename this, I don't know, hand, I guess. Do I want to go hand? Yeah. Cool. So we just need to duplicate it, right? So let's go Shift D and then right click to keep it in place. And then period, go to 3D cursor. So now any transform I'll do, the origin point will be the 3D cursor, basically. So now we can rotate it. About there. I do have snapping turned on, but you don't really have to. I'll probably turn it off and rotate it manually. As you can see, snapping isn't really helping. So I'm going to turn that off and then rotate it till that looks like it's in place. And then for this one, we can just add a mirror modifier and then use the middle piece as the mirror object. There we go. Nice. Look at that. Simple, right? Like I'm saying, like none of this is actually hard. It just takes a bit of time. And, kind of like you have to plan it in your head, I guess. That's probably the hardest part. All right, cool. So here, I'll Shift S, cursor selected. I'm going to bring in a circle or cylinder. I'm just adding a bit more detail, basically. Like I said, the more detail you add, the better it looks. I don't know, it's a bit weird, but the more random stuff you put in there, it kind of gives it purpose, I guess, in some funny way. So I'm going to select this, and then, as you guessed, I'm going to bevel it. I'm telling you, everything just looks better beveled. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to add one more down here. So I'm going to select this and then duplicate it. Now, obviously, it's mirrored, so I'm going to try to line them up as best as I can. So I'm going to turn off clipping real quick. And I'm going to bring it in along the X. Just until I see it kind of line up towards the top. So something like that. And I'm going to delete the left side. Delete vertices. Perfect. Alright, let me just double check here. Let's turn on clipping and let's move it to the right just a tiny bit and then back into the left. Just to make sure the clipping is actually activated. There we go. Perfect. I accidentally did half of it, so let's extrude that down. Okay. As you can see, it just gives it, I don't know, it just makes it look a little bit nicer. Again, for you, you can add as much detail, as little detail as you want. Alright, so let's take these. So select this and then that. And then shift select the middle part. And then press Ctrl P. And then parent it to object. So when you're parenting things, the last thing you select is what everything's going to be parented to, if that makes sense. Okay. Alright. So let's bring everything back. So /. And then we just need to line up. Okay. Let me select these. And this, that. And let's isolate these real quick. So we need to turn this into a mesh first of all, these curves that we added. As you can see, I'm going to rotate it. Kind of just line them up. Obviously, the mirror modifier is still applied, so that's why it's being there. And you can change the mirror as well. You can change it. You can see the axis on the right there. There's X, Y, and Z. So just find something that works. Instead of fingers, let's select this middle part. There you go. Let's probably duplicate again. Oh, sorry, parent. What am I talking about? Alright, so let's add another mirror modifier to it, just so we can flip it to the other side. Let's select the middle piece. There we go. Perfect. Now we have the tubes all over. Nice. Okay. Let's add these down here. Okay, there you go. I just placed them in there, basically. Okay, so I'm just separating everything, basically. You know how I joined them together earlier? Now I separate them. Because obviously when we add a rig to it, we want it all to be separate. So it can have, the rig can affect different parts of the mesh. If that makes sense. So press OP, clear the parent to this one. And then let's join it to this. Oh, sorry, parent it to this. There we go. So now this will control the whole thing. Okay, so I think we need to just clear the mirror object and select this middle piece as the mirror object. So now it should work. Let me just turn this off as well. Let's see. There we go. Perfect. So you want the mirror object to be whichever piece you're working on. Alright, cool. So let's do the same thing for the other sides. Alright, so let's bring in a let's go with the cylinder. I think a cylinder would work. Let's scale that up. Something like that. Let's bring this down. This is gonna be like the bottom piece of it. Obviously, you don't want it to just be floating there. So let's bring the bottom piece up a little bit. Something like this. I might scale it out just a little bit more. Do I want to add a bevel? You know what? I'll probably won't for this part. I'm gonna let it slide this one time. Alright, so let's parent this to that. So parent object. There we go. Make sure it's working. Perfect. Alright, cool. So let's bring everything back. So now we can move everything around easier just using this cylinder we just added. Because obviously everything's parented to it. So we're going to bring this forward here. So rotate that 90 degrees. And then let's just place it here. Whatever looks good, basically. It doesn't need to be perfect. There we go. You can already see it's starting to take shape. Look at that. It's looking good. You know what? I might add a bit more detail to this. I don't know. Because it looks like, I don't know. Obviously, I don't have enough reference images, but I feel like there should be like another piece between the, like the fingers, I guess, and then the actual arm. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Maybe scale it up a tiny bit. Just until the whole thing is basically sitting inside the arm. Okay, something like that. Forget to save. Alright. Let me just look at this again. Because, I don't know, something about it feels off. I can't really tell what it is exactly, but something just feels off. I don't know. I feel like we should add another piece in between the arm, like the actual, you know, the scales or whatever they're called, and the fingers. Alright, so I decided to go with that, so let's just do it real quick. So let's bring in a cylinder. I'm going to show you a little quick trip. Quick trip? What? Hey, yo, I cannot speak. Alright, a quick trick is what I meant to say. Cool, so this is going to be our light, our, you know, there's like actual like a little beam in the middle of the actual fingers. So let's inset this. Extrude it in, inset it, and then extrude it in. Probably do it 3 times. Like I said, the more detail you add, the better it comes out looking for some reason. So there we go. Like a little inception kind of thing. And again, you know, I can't resist. I'll probably add some bevels. You know what? Let's do that real quick. I'm telling you, I can't live without my bevels. Everything just looks nicer with a bevel. Probably bevel this outer part. Perfect. So this is going to be our middle piece where the beam is going to be coming out of. Okay, perfect. We can parent it to this. There we go. Okay. So now we have this, right? What that's left to do is obviously add the next piece, which is going to be sitting in between the arm and the hand, and then rig it all up. I mean, you could rig it right now, but I don't know. Something just feels off for some reason, so I don't know. I'll think about it. Try to solve it real quick. Alright, cool. And by the different colors you're seeing, that's just the mode I'm in. So matte cap and then go to random. It just gives every part just a random color. That's all it is. Alright, cool. So I found a bit more reference images. Here we go. So this is the part I was talking about where it actually connects. Because right now it just looks a bit weird, isn't it? It's just random. But you can see there's this kind of piece there. So this part is still there, right? This little disc, but there's a squarish piece, like a hexagon kind of thing. As you can see. And that's actually connected to the fingers. So let's make that real quick. This is why you should get more reference images, as many as you can. Alright, so I'm going to select everything by hand. So just these parts that I need. That's not distracting me. Let's go /. Isolate everything. Nice. So let's move this forward. Just a tiny bit. To give it a bit of space, and then we're gonna add that in that gap, basically. That's what I was trying to say this whole time. There we go. Hopefully you guys can understand what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I'm finding it so hard to speak right now. So let's bring in a circle, and then this is the trick I was talking about. So down here, let's go to vertices and set that to 6, and then press enter, or just click out. Let's rotate that. Scale that up. Let me select the circle, go Shift S, cursor selected. Select this, Shift S, selected to cursor. Alright, so let's go front view. And let's just rotate it until we get the edges how we want it. So rotate it by 30 degrees or something like that. Okay, so let's select these edges here. Alright. And we're going to extrude these forwards. So let's go extrude Y. Okay. Just trust the process. It might look weird right now. So let's scale that in. Kind of have it tapered in. Something like that. Okay. Let's pull this back a little bit. I'm telling you, trust the process. I think it's going to come out good just by adding this little piece. So let's add loop cuts to the middle of them. So just Control R somewhere in the middle. Now let's select the loop cuts we just made. And then we're going to scale those in. Just add a bit more depth to it. Perfect. Alright, so let's add a solidify modifier. Give it a bit of thickness. Not too much though. Alright, something like that. Cool. That looks pretty good. And I think we should just either add more pieces in the middle or kind of just close out these gaps that you can see. So now let's taper. Actually, do I want to taper each one? You know what? Let's go to individual origins. And let's scale them down. Not too much, to just make it a little bit sharper looking. Let's select these parts here. So box select. And then SY0 just to make sure it's flat along the Y. And then we can bring that in a little bit. Kind of just hide it within this cylinder. Alright, cool. There we go. I think it already looks a bit better. So if you press this tip here and press V, it will separate it. It will break it up. And then you can right click to keep it where it is. Alright, and then we're just going to scale them apart. So you can double press it to slide them down. I just want a bit of gap there. Like a tiny little gap. Something like that. Okay. So this is what we got to right now. Alright. So let me find another reference image. Real quick. Okay. Looks a bit more interesting, I guess. I'm just trying to see how it joins back up, basically. How it's all interact with each other. So let's close these gaps here. Some other loop cut. And another one here as well. And then just select these four. And then press F to make a face. Make sure you select the right ones. Like so. I'm going to do the same thing on the other sides as well. And I'll probably speed this part up, to be honest. Alright, cool. So this is what we got to right now. Nice. I did add a bevel modifier, by the way. So I feel like we should just fill up this middle part. Okay, so let's add in a cylinder again. Gonna scale this down. I've got an idea in my head. Let's see if it will work out. So I'm gonna scale this in. Oh, sorry, rotate it. And then, let me think about this real quick. Let's pull this face out back like this. Let me just isolate it so I can kind of see a little bit better. Cool. So I'm not too sure what I'm trying to do, but at the same time, I know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make like coils, basically. If you know what I'm trying to have. You know, when you look at like a motor, there's like this like copper coil going around. So I'm gonna extrude that out. Let's just see. I feel like let's select this. Shift S, cursor to selected. And then let's bring in another cylinder. And then this is gonna be like a little ring kind of thing, like a magnet. If you ever look at speaker or a motor, there's like usually like a magnet and then some coils around it. So I'm just trying to replicate that. So let's select these two faces here. Let's press I to inset them. And then again, we're gonna search for bridge edge loops. There we go. Alright, so now we just need to place this somewhere in here. There you go. I'm literally just freestyling right now. Like, if this doesn't work out, it's whatever, but let's just see it. The reason why I don't practice the tutorials before I make them is just, I don't know, it just gives me a bit more pressure. I've got to actually test myself and my blend of knowledge, if that makes sense. So I feel like if I practice beforehand, then it just gets a bit too easy. So I know exactly what to do on it. But yeah, I'm going to scale these down. So far, so good though. I haven't really made, you know, any big mistakes or anything. I haven't had to restart. Alright, so what am I trying to do here? Let me scale this down a little bit more. Something like that. And I'll probably just duplicate this around the cylinder. Just to make the coils that I'm trying to... I'm picturing in my head right now. So... Alright, cool. So this is what we got to. It's looking pretty cool. I just duplicated a bunch of times and rotated around the cylinder. You can see here, it kind of gives this little coil look. This, I don't know, generator, whatever kind of look. I'm just saying a bunch of random works at this point. Alright. You know what? I'm happy with that. I think there's enough detail where it looks like it has a purpose. You probably won't even be able to see the inside of it, but it's just there, you know. In our heads, we know it's there. There's enough detail. You can see, I think this came out much better than how it was before, with just the one cylinder. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do is put all of this under... So select all of it, press M, and then put it in a collection. And then let's rename this base mesh. So basically, I'm going to duplicate this and then make changes to the duplicate so that we can always have this base mesh there, safe, with no changes that we can always go back to. So select all of it. Let's go Shift D, so duplicate it, and then M, give it a new collection. And let's call it, I don't even know. Test 1, I guess. Or arm 1 or whatever. So now we have a duplicate of it, and then we can hide it, turn all of these off, turn the original off. That's what I'm trying to say. So now we can start merging things together and rigging, etc, etc. Alright. Cool, okay. Let's press Control U. Let's see what it looks like. So what I did, I converted it into a mesh. So if you go to Object, Convert to, and then Mesh, you can see I have my shortcut, which is Control U. So whenever I say Control U, that's what I'm trying to say. You can right click it as well and then add your own shortcut. Obviously for you, we say add shortcut. Mine it says change shortcut, and then pick whatever shortcut you want. So Control U on all of these. What Control U does is basically just applies all the modifiers. All in one go, so you don't have to go click one by one and click apply, etc. So everything's separate right now. We have all the different finger joints separate into their own pieces, which is exactly what we want for rigging. And they're all in the right place. Okay. I'll join these two. How does that look in? Let's add a bevel. You know what? I think that's good enough. I think that'll work. It's not too bad. Let's join these two together. So the coil in the middle. Join that to this. Just try to keep everything, you know, together if you can. Especially if it's not a moving part. Okay. So this is what we're left with. So this is one piece here. Well, it's not one piece, but it's parented to that. And then we have this here parented to that. Perfect. Alright, so for the rigging process, again, pretty simple. Let's add in a burn. So Shift C to bring the cursor back to the original point. Let's go to armature, single bone. And then I'm just going to scale it up a little bit so I can see it a bit better. Let's rotate that 90 degrees along the X. Cool. So let's go into edit mode and select the tip of it. You'll see it'll be like a little orange ball kind of thing. And then I'm just going to bring that forwards. Now you could extrude it for all the different spines, but I'm just going to move it forwards until to the where I think it's going to end. Like that. And then let's select all of it. Press W, subdivide, and Shift R to repeat the subdivision. So let's subdivide it like, I don't know, 4 times. So we want 16 bones or whatever. Whatever you pick, really. I think that should be enough. And then here, this end part here, it is selected. I want this to be... Actually, let's move it forward a bit more. Let's just scale everything until you can see it kind of poking out a little bit. Alright, so we have it coming out like that. Okay. So let's press this middle part here. Shift S, because it's too selected. And then select the bone, Shift S, select it to cursor. Now let's just move it back. I selected the wrong bone, but it's alright. Let's move it back along the Y. Kind of put it back to where it was supposed to be. So now the armature, or the bones, is sitting exactly in the middle. So let's press Ctrl A or transform for the bone. Go into edit mode. Let's go to front view and let's extrude it up along the Z. We're just going to extrude it up to each joint, if that makes sense, right? Up to the finger joint. So let's press OP and then disconnect. And then let's move that up. That's going to be our first finger bone. And let's bring that all the way up to the joint. So somewhere right there, something like that. And let's extrude this up one more time. And then one more time for the top. There we go. So we have all of these. Let's go Shift-T to duplicate, right click. And then rotate it along the Y. And then just line it up with the other part. And then let's do that one more time for the other side. So Shift-T, right click to keep in place. And then rotate along the Y. And then line it up there. So now we have this. Perfect. There we go. I don't really mess around with the armatures much, but I think this will work. So let's go Shift-T with this middle part. This is going to be our IK bone. So IK is like a controller bone. I don't know how to explain IK. You could probably search that up, but so go to edit mode. Let's select this bone here. Let's rename that. Let's go IK underscore bone or whatever. It's smart. Well, it's probably a good idea to rename every single bone to something you can recognize. Let's rename this one finger something underscore top underscore 1. And obviously it's going to be finger underscore top underscore 2. You get the point. Etc. etc. Right. Underscore top underscore 2. And then this one too. Underscore 3. Now this one's going to be finger underscore right because it's the right side. So I'll just R. So then probably just put an R. And then same thing underscore 1. You get the point. Alright, so all of these are named. So if you go down here, by the way, I just press F2 to rename them. And then you can see here that all have their own different names. Okay, perfect. Now that we have this, let's press OP, clear parent on that bone. Let's select that bone. Come down here where it says deform, uncheck that because obviously that bone isn't going to actually deform the mesh. So let's select this last bone here in the middle. Let's go into pose mode. So select this one there. Go down here to bone constraints. So you have object constraints and then bone constraints. Do not mess those up. And let's add an inverse kinematic. That's basically an IK. So when I say IK, that's what I'm talking about. So target will be armature, which is the whole armature, the whole bone. So for bone, we're going to pick our IK bone, which we named earlier. So find it. There we go. You see it will turn yellow. So now when we move this, as you can see, it's controlling the whole chain. As you can see, which is exactly what we want, right? So that's basically what an IK bone is. There we go. You can see it moving around. Let's go to side view. And that's exactly how we want it to move, right? Well, for now at least. You can see it looks pretty good. Okay. Alright, so let's click back onto here. Then we have the IK there, right? Under chain link, let's go. Let me just show you what this does. So it just tells you or it's telling the bones how many it wants to affect. So if I move this, it's only affecting 2, as you can see, because I selected 2, if that makes sense. So if I do 4, it will be the 4 bones down the chain, as you can see, and the rest will be basically dead. They won't move. So let's put this back to 0. So 0 will affect the whole thing. Let's select this. Now you can see the whole thing is moving. It just gives you a little bit more control if you need it. Obviously in this case, we want it to be 0, but the option's there. So we also want a constraint for the, or IK for the fingers as well. Because we want the fingers to close and open, you know, all at once. Rather than sitting there and animating each actual. Alright, so in edit mode, real quick, I'm going to select this joint here. And then I'm going to extrude that forward. So just E to extrude. Bring that forward. This is going to be our IK. So press OP and then clear parent. With it still selected, let's go down to bone. Turn off deform just like before. Because it's going to be our IK. Okay, so let's move that. Do you want to move it forward? You know what, let's go back into pose mode. Let's select this top one here. And then we're going to add a bone constraint, IK, just like before. Target is going to be armature, as always. Bone, we're going to select this, the one we just extruded. So this bone right here. So let's select this bone. Let's rename it real quick. Just keep everything simple. So let's go finger. Let's go finger underscore IK underscore top. Something like that. Okay. Obviously that's gonna be top, right, left, etc. So let's select this front part. And then bone. You can select finger IK top, which is the one we just made. Okay, why is it messed up? So where it says chain link, let's click 3, because obviously we have 3 bones. 1, 2, 3. That's about it. So now we select this and move it. Okay, why is it only moving 2? Did I click 3 or 2? Let's go back in. Okay, sorry. Make sure it's 3, not 2. So if it's just like before, if it's 1, it will only affect the top bone. As you can see, 2, it will select 2, obviously. The next one down the chain, basically, right? So whether it's at the IK, that's the beginning of the chain. So whichever bone is yellow, that'll be bone number 1. So make sure it's 3, and there we go. You can see it's working how we want it. So now we're gonna do the same thing for the 3 sides. So let's save that before we start. Go into edit mode again. Select this front joint here, extrude that forwards, clear the parent, and then uncheck deform, and then the same steps. Okay. So let's select these 2, and then I'm basically parenting the finger IKs onto the main IK so that they follow it, just like this. So I do the same thing with these other ones. So select the 2, Control P, and remember the last thing you select, that's what everything will be parented to. And make sure you parent it and then click keep offset. I cannot speak. There we go. That's working exactly how we want, as you can see. All right, perfect. So now that we have that working, the rig's all working. All we have to do, so let's select this. Go to modifiers, and let's add the array modifier or apply it. Okay. So let's go in here. So just to make sure it's working. Okay, so now we just need to parent the 2. So Control P and then automatic weights. So now that they're parented together, let's select this, the armature. Go into pose mode and let's see if it's work. Might be a bit choppy. Probably will be a bit glitchy. Okay. Alright. So that works pretty well. Obviously I've only, I haven't parented the other parts yet. Just the main part. Just to check that it works properly. Okay, so let's go back, Control Z. Alright, so now that we just confirmed that that's working how we want it so far, let's just see if we want to merge everything together yet. So select this tube, and I think I'm gonna apply the array modifier. So I'm just press Control U for me and do the same thing. So all the other tubes, just turn them to a mesh, Control U, or apply the modifier. So I'm gonna join all 3 together, the 3 tubes. Okay, let's rename them, I don't know, tubes or whatever. Okay, and let's parent those onto the armature. Control P with automatic weights. Alright, so for these finger parts, so let's just select the object we want and let's go Alt P, clear and keep transform, just to get rid of any parents we may have made before. Okay, so now I shouldn't have any parents to it. Alright, so now let's shift select the bone and go into pose mode, and then we're going to just select whichever bone we want it to be affected by, and we're going to parent the 2. So select this bone, press Control P and bone. So basically the object will be parented to this specific bone, not to the whole armature, but to this specific bone. So whatever this bone does, the object will follow it, which is exactly what we want. So now let's do the same thing for all the other joints. So select whichever bone you want it to be affected by and parent the 2. Alright, cool. So let's make sure this is actually pulling the right areas, if that makes sense. So let's select the bone. Let's go into pose mode. Let's select this IK and let's move that up. And then as you can see, it's not affecting this part at all. So the middle part is actually perfect. It's working properly. But this middle part isn't working. So to fix that, we're going to go into weight paint mode. Now you might not have this problem, but obviously it's not working for me. So let's go object mode. Let's select. So before that, actually, we need to rename every single bone, which I should have done earlier. So select this back one here. Go to the bones tab. You can see they all have just random names, right? Just bone, whatever. So let's rename them spine _1. And obviously we're gonna move up, you know, naming them. Next gonna be spine underscore 2, and then spine underscore 3, etc. You get the point. So we're just gonna organize everything. All right, so we've given every bone a name, right? Running down the chain. So now let's exit out of edit mode. Let's bring everything back. I'm just turn on my screencast real quick. Yeah, what is that color? All right, so let's get started. Cool. So let's select this part here, which wasn't being affected earlier. And then in here, I basically just hit the modifiers just to make my laptop run a bit faster. There we go. So that's why there's half of it missing. So select it and then select the armature. And then go into, select the armature and select the mesh. I don't even think you need to select the armature, but let's go into weight paint. So select the mesh and then weight paint. You can see it's all blue. And if you look in here, there's this little red area, right? So you have red and blue. So what that means is it's basically a map. That's one way to think about it. So the red is where the parent is being affected the most, where the bone is being affected the most. And then blue basically means there's like no effect to that area. Which is why when we moved the bone earlier, the blue part wasn't moving, which was the mesh. So we want all the parts to be red. So let's go down here to this triangle. And you want to select each bone. So this is 15, which is the one we selected. What we want to do is affect the blue area too. So we have to paint that in, basically. So right now it's only affecting the inside bit, which is red. So all we have to do, let's maybe put this down over here. And then paint in. You can see it's changing colors. So red is the strongest and then blue is the weakest. So another way to think about it is basically red is the area that's been affected the most by the bone. And blue isn't being affected at all. So I'm going to go through each bone and just paint this map. Also, another thing, make sure you alternate between X-ray mode and normal view. So put Alt Z so that you can get all the different sides that are hidden. Alright, cool. So you should have something like this basically, right? Whereas the red on the outside, well, throughout the whole thing. And then all I have to do is select the next bone down. So if let's go to 14. And then redo the same step. So just paint the outside. So 15, you can see the whole piece is red. And you want to do that along the whole chain. If yours works already, you don't have to do this, but it is a bit time consuming, but it's going to give you a better outcome. So yeah, put on some music and all that and just run through it. As you guys can see, finger 2R is affecting this part of the mesh, which you shouldn't do. You should only affect the fingers. So what that means is whenever that bone moves, in this case this bone here, it's going to affect this side as well, this part of the mesh, which we don't want. So make sure you click through all the different bones and make sure they're affecting the areas you want them to. In this case, we can turn the weight to 0 and just paint that off, paint that blue in all the angles. So just clear them all out. Alright, cool. So you can see spine 1 and then go down to 2. It's all done, 3, etc. So yeah, there we go. As you can see, we've marked out all the different areas properly. This just gives us greater control basically on how the different parts will move, which is exactly what we want. Again, if you don't have this problem and your rig works fine, you don't have to worry about all of this. But if certain parts of the mesh aren't moving, or they are moving when you don't want them to, then you have to weight paint. It's just a process. You might as well learn it. So yeah, that's that. What's left is the materials. But before that, I think I'm gonna add in a cylinder just to control the whole thing. So bring the cursor back. Let's bring in a cylinder. If I can find it. There we go. Okay, scale that up. Let's rotate that. There we go. Scale that back down. I'm going to scale it along the Y. Okay. So this is where the arms are going to be projecting out of, right? If that makes sense. So I'm going to select all of these here. Let's scale that down. And then we can inset it. So I to inset. And then extrude that in. Just a little bit. And add some loop cuts in the middle. Perfect. Maybe some on the outside. Alright, cool. Something like that. So let me turn the mirror back on just to see what it looks like. So we can line it up a little bit better. This is what we have. Maybe bring this down. Something like that. Perfect. W, shade smooth. Go down to the shading panel or the normals panel. Turn that on. Perfect. So this will be our base there basically. So I'm gonna parent the armature onto it, just to make things easier to move, basically, easier to select. So let's select the armature and then shift select this cylinder and then Control P object and keep transform. Just so that when we parent it, it doesn't affect the rig itself. So let me just hide the mirror again. So now when we move this around, the whole thing is parented to it, which is exactly what we want. Perfect. So last thing to do, let me just move this forward a tiny bit. Okay. We need to bring in the coat, the jacket. So obviously, he's wearing a coat, and then these arms are kind of just coming out of the coat. So I'm just gonna get one from any 3D marketplace out there, Turbo Squid or whatever. I'll probably leave one in the description if I find one, and I can download it there. So just import that in real quick. Alright, so to import it real quick, let's go to File. There we go, import. I'm gonna choose OBJ because that's the file that I got. And then just find the file location wherever you saved it, basically. Again, link in the description. We take it straight to it, and then click append or import, sorry. And then we just wait for it to import. Alright, so let's rotate it 90 degrees the right way. Alright, so I'm going to scale that up. Again, you can choose whatever scale looks fine to you. I think, okay, this might be, I don't know, it might be a bit too small. Let's scale it up a little bit more. Something like that. Kind of position it, lower it down a little bit. You can already see where I'm trying to go with this. Now I might scale it up a little bit more. Again, if you have reference images open, this will be a lot easier to, go off of. But I'm gonna just go with whatever feels right. I don't know. Make it a bit wider, I guess. Something like so. Yeah, just place it around till you get somewhere that you like. Alright, so let's select the cylinder, the one that we parented the armature to, and then let's just move it over to the right. Because obviously we're gonna have 4 different arms. So let's just position it to where it's supposed to be. Again, if you have the reference images, this will go by a lot easier. So let me hide all of these again. Make my PC run a little bit faster. Okay. I mean, I think this looks like the right place. Alright, so this is going to be the first arm. So we want to make sure we make everything on one side first, right? And then duplicate that over. Alright, so to duplicate, we're going to select the collection. And you want to right click it. And then duplicate it. Probably collection. Or maybe linked. It's probably duplicate linked. So save before you do that. And by the way, do not duplicate yet. I'm just showing you how to duplicate, but we're going to do that right now. I'm just going to show you right now, basically, if that makes sense. So after you duplicate it, you want to select the cylinder that we printed earlier. So before that, we're going to hide the last collection we made, the first one. And then let's find the cylinder. And then we can move this over. So we can turn this back and move it over. So obviously don't do this yet because we need to add the materials first. If you duplicate it, you're going to have to add materials to all 4 different arms, which is going to take a long time. So do not duplicate it yet. We're going to move into the materials. We're going to make the materials for the first collection. And then you can duplicate once you've got everything, the way you want it to be. Then we can duplicate the arms. So yeah, let's move on to the materials real quick. Alright, so let's add the materials real quick. So let's start with this. Probably should have done this before adding the array earlier, but it is what it is. Hindsight, innit? Alright, so let's but this is just reference images I'm using. Let's go new. And let's name this, call it anything. I'm gonna call it metal, because it is metal, right? And alright, let's go with that. Let me just move this down a little bit. Alright, cool. So let's click this plus icon to add another material. And then let's call this one plastic. It's going to be for the tubes that are running through, basically. So got that plastic. Actually, let me rename this one metal underscore outer. Because obviously there's different parts to it, right? So it's going to be this outside part there. So yeah, I'm going to add as many materials as I need and I'll come back with you guys. Alright. So I've added different materials. Now all that's left is to assign them to different areas of the model. So let's go into edit mode. Okay, alright, so in EV we can go to rendered view just so we can kind of see what we're doing a bit better. and we can get started setting up the materials. Now I haven't actually assigned the different materials to the different parts of the mesh yet. So when we add a newer material, or give it color in this case, let's go to the plastic. Let's just give it a black color. You'll see that the whole mesh will go black, as you can see, because it's not assigned to the tubes yet. But anyways, let's go to the metal, and then let's just open a new tab here. So bottom left corner, drag it, click and drag, and then here let's open up shader editor, and then I'm just gonna drag in my textures basically. Again, if you want them, link in the description. So just bring in all the different textures. You're probably gonna have to bring them in one by one, I'm not too sure. Okay, alright, so we just gonna need to plug in everything basically wherever it needs to go. So the color will obviously go into the color, roughness into the roughness, and then the normal will go into a bump, and then into the normal. Alright, so let's press Ctrl T over this color. Obviously you need to have Node Wrangler turned on as an add-on. If you don't, just go to edit preferences, add-ons, and search for Node Wrangler. So let's open up UV editor, and then we're gonna open up the texture that we're using. So the bottom right obviously is the plastic. So we need to unwrap this first of all. So let's go into edit mode. So this is gonna be the long part. Select each part where you want the material to be applied. In this case, it's gonna be the tube. So let's select all these outer faces, and we can hide those for now at least. So just hover over them, press L, and then if you select all of them, just press H to hide them. Cool. Alright, so after you selected everything, well, the outer part, we can press H to hide that. And then let's select all the middle parts. So hover over them and just press L. And then press Ctrl I to invert this selection, and then apply the plastic material to that. Alright, so after we apply the material to the tubes here, we just need to unwrap it. So when it's selected, press U and then click unwrap, and then you see this little orange part here in the UV texture. Obviously this bottom right side is the plastic, so we want it there. So this is what we got. You can see the texture there on there. They might scale this down a little bit more, something like that. Alright, so we need to do the same thing for the metal outer as well. So let's select it. Let's make sure all the textures are plugged in. Again, Ctrl T. And let me show you what Node Wrangler is actually. So the add-on, you just go to edit, preferences, go to add-ons, and then search for Node Wrangler, or just type in Node. And it should be that one there. You should have that turned on basically. So yeah, I'm gonna do the same step for the metal outer as well. And I'll probably just speed up because it is a bit boring. And that's the exact same steps I took to make this part right here, this orangey looking part. So in edit mode, just hover over whichever part you want to select this. In this case, this one, press L to select linked, and then give it material. So we got metal outer, and then unwrap it just like before. So U to unwrap, and then it should show up on the UV editor here. I don't know if you can see it, but this small little little orange part here. You can press S to scale it up, and what that would do, it will give it more detail basically, right? So you have more pixels in that little area. So it's really up to you. If you want more detail, scale it up. In my case, I don't really care about the detail too much. I think it looks realistic enough, so I won't make it as big. But yeah, you can give it more yellow if you want it in the texture. Now you can see it has a lot more detail than the other parts. So if you don't want it to have as much detail, like these ones here, you can just keep it small basically and just put it somewhere. But yeah, that's the same step for everything else literally. Just give it a material. And here actually, let me show you the little light that I did. So for this period, all I did was in edit mode, alright, just select this middle face and then just give it its own new material, which is an emission basically with a red, and then just click assign to it. So you assign the face onto that material in edit mode. And yeah, that's about it pretty much. Nothing too complicated. Hopefully I haven't missed out anything else. But yeah, that's basically the materials. Let's go into Eevee real quick. Let me just show you how you can kind of set up your settings basically, I guess. So turn on ambient occlusion. Let's go 10 maybe. Okay, that's way too high. Let's go 2. Okay, that looks a bit better. Kind of just gives you better shadows basically. Let's turn on screen space reflections, and look at that. Looks amazing already. Turn on refraction. That's mainly for like glass and stuff really. Let's turn on bloom. There we go. And automatic, that looks a lot better. So yeah, play with these settings until you get something that you're happy with. I'm doing with this. Obviously, if you want a better texture, you know, you can use a higher resolution image, I guess. I think the one I made is like a 1K texture. So if you really want higher resolution, you could just make like a 4K texture or something. But I can't be bothered. I think this is good enough. You don't really need it. Also, you could make the materials procedurally, which is not really that hard, but I just can't be bothered. I think you can kind of get away with it just using image textures. It's a lot faster anyways. And it's more beginner friendly. So yeah, that's basically it. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. So obviously I just added like a fog and some lights, kind of set it up. So if I turn this back on, you can see there's this box. So it's added a cube and give it a fog material. So a principled volume going into the volume input of the material output, if that makes sense. And this added some lights, you know, make it look a bit more intense. So this is what it looks like. Reflections look pretty good. And again, if you want higher, you know, textures or quality, just use high quality, you know, higher resolution textures. And I think the spice is pretty realistic, especially when it's moving, you know. You could have made like a feature, like a, you know, a short film or something, like a fan, whatever it's called. I think it would pass off pretty well. No one's going to be looking at your butt maps and reflections and stuff, don't worry. And this is what it looks like without the fog. I just took away the fog so you can see a little bit better. I think it looks pretty good. And now is the time you can actually duplicate the arms. So like I said earlier, if you did duplicate it earlier, you would have had to done all of these steps 4 times, which would be very long. So now that you have one arm done and it's rigged and it works properly, now you can duplicate it. So again, just select that collection and make a duplicate of it. Duplicate it linked. And then yeah, let's set that up. Alright, so the last thing to do, as you can see right now, these are kind of just sticking out from the jacket, which doesn't look realistic at all. We want like tears in there, so you know the fabric looks a bit more realistic. So to do that, we're going to use a boolean modifier. So what a boolean is, you basically, the whole concept is you use one object to cut away at another object, if that makes sense. So we're going to use one object to cut away at the jacket in this case, or the coat. Alright, so let's reposition a little bit. So I think I'm going to add in a cylinder. Yeah. Well, you could tear into the mesh, but then that's going to be destructive, you know. It's going to actually damage the mesh. So using a boolean, it will still keep the original topology, if that makes sense. So add in a cylinder, rotate, let's scale that up a little bit. And I'm just going to position it here. Just in the right area, basically. Cool. Alright. So let's just place it kind of where it's meant to be. So let's bring that up. Again, this have to be perfect. Try to make it just about bigger than the actual arms, if that makes sense. So it kind of looks like his how do I explain this? It kind of looks like the cloth is interacting with the arms, if that makes sense, right? So I'm gonna add a bunch of loop cuts in edit mode. So the more loop cuts you add, the better the boolean will come out. Basically, you will have more faces to go off of, if that makes sense. So let's just scroll up. There we go. Just add. That's probably too many, but it'll work anyways. And then let's go into edit mode. Let's select the coat, and then let's select these three here, and / just to isolate those three. So we're gonna have all the other stuff kind of distracting us. Okay, so let's go down here. Normals, auto smooth. Okay, let's select the coat. Come to the modifiers panel, and let's add a boolean. That's it there. And then click this eyedropper and select the cylinder we just made. And you want it to be on difference, which is this option here. So difference basically cuts away at the material. Union will kind of join the two, and intersect will join the two, but only where they meet, if that makes sense. So now let's select the cylinder, and let's add a displacement modifier. So this is just going to give a bit more texture. So it's going to look weird at first. So click new. It's going to look weird again. And then scroll down here to the texture properties. And then where it says type, just go to clouds. Again, you can experiment with this, whichever you like, but I'm going to go with clouds. I think that probably looks the best. You can see it just adds a bit more chaos, I guess. Right. It makes it look a little bit more realistic. So to see what we're actually doing, instead of hiding the cylinder, we can select it, go to object data, object properties, go down to viewport display, and then where it says display as, click, when it says texture now, just go to wire or bounds. There you go. Now you can see the effects of it. You can also click wires, so you still be able to see the topology of the cylinder, if that makes sense, like so. So yeah, it's really up to you. So I think you see now, it looks a lot more realistic. Whereas earlier it was just like a smooth circle. There we go. And then if you had a bit more, want to be extra, you could go in to the jacket or the coat in sculpt mode and kind of pull certain areas out. So with the cylinder selected, you can play with the mid-level or the strength until you get something that you like. So for me, I think a mid-level of whatever that is, 0.3 looks about right. Okay, and then all you have to do now would be to duplicate this 3 more times basically for the other 3 arms, and add 3 more boolean modifiers to the coat, and that's basically it. Okay, and that is it for this tutorial. Kind of a lengthy one. I just wanted to make sure I was going in depth with everything. I basically just posed the arms. You can choose whatever you want basically. Added some lights, a bit of fog, and then this camera. And all that's left to do is just press render. And by the way, if you do make anything, just tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you guys make with it. But yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys for watching. Click that subscribe button. Leave a comment down below as well, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.